Get the grain out of Ukraine. This was my cry a few weeks ago when I published a video describing how the world's food supply was at risk. I explained three factors. First, the Russian invasion had trapped millions of tons of grain in Ukrainian ports. Second, the effects of global warming were potentially affecting production of food in different parts of the world. And finally, the risk of inflation and high food prices was affecting people everywhere, especially in poor countries. These problems combined could push hundreds of millions of people into malnutrition and famine. I published that video in early July 2022. But now, almost 2 months later, the situation has evolved and I want to give you an update. So join me in this video. What is happening with the food crisis? Well, I have good news. The grain is starting to come out of Ukraine. According to numbers published by The Economist, as of mid-July 2022, there were close to 20 million tons of grain trapped in Ukrainian ports, especially in Odesa. And this grain could not reach the markets because Ukraine had mined its waters to avoid a Russian invasion from the sea. Ukraine is a large food exporter. With its ports blocked, the country tried moving exports through other routes. During the first 4 months of the war, only 5 million tons had been exported. This is what Ukraine used to export in a single month. Any exports had to go through other routes, by truck, rail, or river barges. But moving millions of tons of grain by road is a lot harder than doing it by sea. Just for comparison, one big ship can carry 80,000 tons of grain. Moving the same amount by road would require 3,600 trucks. 2 months ago, the big worry was that most of the grain trapped would never reach the markets. And even worse, with the silos full, Ukraine would not be able to store the grain from the next harvest, causing much of it to rot in the fields. But things changed at the end of July. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey and Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, helped broker a deal between Ukraine and Russia, opening up and allowing grain to reach world markets. The deal considers two things. First, the creation of a maritime humanitarian corridor, clearing some of the mines in the sea to allow cargo ships to access Ukrainian ports. Second, forming a joint coordination center in Istanbul, where representatives from Russia and Ukraine, together with Turkey and the United Nations, are to inspect cargo ships coming in and out of the Black Sea to make sure that they are not carrying weapons. The deal will be renewed every 4 months. Ukraine and Russia are still at war, of course. But in a good diplomatic maneuver, Turkey signed the deal separately with both countries, with the United Nations as witness. Everything seemed to be in place. Then the very next day, Russia fired missiles at Odesa, putting the whole thing at risk. But fortunately, the deal survived. On the first day of August, the first ship left Odesa with 26,000 tons of grain bound for Lebanon. 9 more ships quickly followed, carrying 300,000 tons in total. And more cargoes are on the way, loading and heading down through the Bosphorus to the Mediterranean and beyond. Grain is coming out of Ukraine and will help feed a hungry world. This is good news. Many countries, especially in Africa and the Middle East, were raising the alarm and putting pressure on Russia and other countries to act quickly. So far, the deal is working, and it is having a positive effect on the world's food supply. The prices of wheat, corn, rice, and sunflower oil have come down, and they are now at similar levels to what they were before the war. A big sigh of relief was heard everywhere. But we're not completely out of trouble yet. Time is still precious. Ukraine must quickly open up enough space to store the 60 million tons of grain expected to be harvested this year to feed people in 2023. The war continues, and the deal is fragile. On top of that, the cost of energy and fertilizers is still very high, and the strong US dollar is making imports more expensive in many countries. But at least, the immediate risk of a major breakdown in the food supply system has been averted. Also, global food production is looking healthier than it did a few months ago. Russia, another big grain exporter, is expecting a record harvest this year, producing about 2 million tons more than originally expected. So, a big thank you to the parties that participated in putting together this deal. Let's hope it continues working. You know, sometimes the world goes crazy, but other times it calms down and it moves forward. Let's keep going. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Click on the link if you have never seen my previous video on the food crisis. And you will also be able to see some of my other content. Feel free to leave your comments, press like, subscribe, whatever you want. And I'll see you next time.